From Television City in Hollywood.
Special shout out to my neighbor, my little gremlin's mother. She provided the potatoes, and the neighbor behind us actually provided the meat. So this here is 100% because we have really good friends and really cool neighbors. Enjoy the show. This is Cafe Noir.
The next course will be served in a moment.
The following program contains graphic language which may be disturbing to some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised.
For God's sakes, don't fall asleep. The next thing you know, you could be on a jet bound for Daytona with the Beastie Boys. Even that scares me.
Major Video, we bring it on home.
Look what's at Major Video now. The largest selection of hottest movies now on video cassette. Predator, La Bamba, No Way Out, Platoon, Dirty Dancing. Major Video for the largest selection of videos in New England. Look around, relax, enjoy, and remember, lifetime membership is always free at Major Video, the super video store.
Video, we bring it on home.
Now on Mineral Spring Avenue, Pawtucket, Armistice Boulevard, Pawtucket, Warwick Avenue, Warwick, and coming soon to Post Road, North Kingstown.
I'm coming to get you Saturday night.
Freddy's Nightmares, Saturday at 7 on KTTY.
You thought you killed me. Freddy Krueger will never die. I'm closer than you think. Just a phone call away. Dial this number and prepare to be scared. And I'm always around, everywhere. So dial this number now if you dare. Join the Freddy Fan Club. Freddy Krueger has a special message just for you.
$1.50 for the first minute, 35 cents each additional minute.
They're coming.
Marshmallows, Frankenberry, and Count Chocula. Now all the monster cereals have bigger monster-sized marshmallows. Count Chocula has enormous chocolatey marshmallows. It's a delicious part of this nutritious breakfast. New monster marshmallows are here.
The monster marshmallows are here. They're everywhere.
Whoa!
Welcome back to the Cafe Noir, where the fire is always burning and the food screams for mercy. Now tonight we're stepping into the nightmare. A Nightmare on Elm Street, so to speak. But not the version that you're familiar with. No. See, YouTube doesn't like us when we show the movies. But they don't have a problem with us reading a book. And you know, believe it or not, speaking of nightmares, let's talk about California for just a minute. This is the only place where you can get mugged, taxed, and virtue signaled all within the space of 10 minutes. You know, but at least Freddy keeps it simple. He just kills your dumbass. And Tina will find that out later. Tonight, we'll be breaking the story up into 4 paired pieces. Now, these are just the first 3 chapters. Chapter 1 is going to be broken into 2. Chapters 2 and 3, well, you'll get the full script. Now, as we venture into the boiler room, first, I had to think about it, and I've come up with a meal that fits not just the boiler room, but may just give you the feel as though Freddy Krueger cooked it up himself. Yes, I can see it now. Slightly charred, spicy, and just that unhinged look. Sort of like Nancy's dream sequences. And later, stick around as we make our melted flesh mashed potatoes. Because nothing says Freddy Krueger like a pile of melted, crispy skin. So let's get cooking. And we'll see you after this. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 1. Prologue. Freddy was dead. The good people of Elm Street had seen to it that the Springwood slasher would never bother anyone ever again. 10 years had come and gone since, and only now were the good people of Elm Street beginning to sleep peacefully at night, safe and warm in their cozy suburban bedrooms. Freddy was dead and gone, but the nightmare was just about to begin. Chapter 1. Tina woke up screaming, the covers clutched tightly in her trembling hands. "You all right?" asked her mother from the doorway. "Sure, Ma," whispered Tina. "It was just a bad dream." "Just a bad dream," she repeated to herself, trying very hard to believe her own words. Tina had not lived 15 years without suffering an occasional bad dream, but this dream was not like anything she had ever known before. There was something evil about this dream. It had started innocently enough. Tina was lost in a vast room full of leaky pipes and pounding machinery. It was a boiler room. Similar to the one at school, only this one was unbelievably large, and Tina was wearing the same thin nightgown she had gone to sleep in. Despite the steam that had pervaded the stifling air, she felt chilled, right down to the bone, and she wandered aimlessly through iron doorways and along ramps and down metal ladders that seemed always to lead nowhere. And she remembered animal noises. A lamb had bleated, and Tina's heart began to pound furiously in her chest. What a lamb was doing in the boiler room in the first place, and why its bleating should be so terrifying were questions Tina couldn't have answered if her life had depended on it. And why did it feel that it might? Then there was the fabric, a dirty piece of cloth hanging in the middle of nowhere. And suddenly, it tore open. It gave a terrible ripping noise as 4 gleaming blades like steel fingers glittered threateningly in the murky darkness. Tina began to run, but she was thoroughly lost and didn't know which way to go. There was a horrible screeching sound, and the steel blades scraped against the iron pipes like fingernails on the chalkboard, or a high-pitched whine of that dentist's drill as it digs painfully into the exposed nerve. And Tina kept running, knowing that her life depended on escape, but knowing, too, that ultimately there could be no escape. And then she stopped to catch her breath and wipe away the sweat that streamed down her hot face in hot rivulets. And for one sweet moment, Tina felt safe. Perhaps, she thought, just perhaps there might be a way out after all. And that was when the man with the razor blade fingers loomed up right from behind her, clawing at her nightgown with insane fury as he enfolded her into his deadly arms. It was Tina's scream that had awoken her and summoned her mother into the bedroom in the first place. "You sure you're all right?" her mother asked again, still leaning up against the door jamb. "It's just a dream," repeated Tina. "Must have been some dream." Mrs. Gray shook her head slowly from side to side and gazed at her daughter's nightgown. Tina looked down, suddenly aware of the 4 long slashes up the middle of her favorite nightgown. "You better cut your fingernails, or you better stop that kind of dreaming," said her mother, One or the other. She looked at her daughter one more time and then quietly shut the door behind her. Instinctively, Tina reached back and removed the crucifix that hung over her bedroom wall and clutched it to her heart as the cold jump rope song she had sung as a child seemed to chant itself in her brain. Freddy's coming for you. Leave open, lock your door. 5, 6, 7, 8. Gonna stay up late. 9, 10. Never sleep again. That's what it reminded me of, Tina told her best friend Nancy Thompson the next morning. That old jump rope song. Worst nightmare I ever had. Tina was about to ask Nancy about her dream when Rod Lane trotted up from behind him and draped his arm over her shoulders. I had a hard-on this morning when I woke up, Tina, he said. Had your name written all over it. Tina looked at the boy and shrugged off his arm. There's 4 letters in my name, Rod, she said. How could there be room on your joint for 4 letters? Nancy and Glegg laughed at each other out loud. Despite Tina's flip attitude toward the boy, Nancy knew that her friend really liked him. There always seemed to be an almost tangled sexual tension in the air whenever Tina and Rod were together, and the fact that Tina's mother couldn't stand the boy only added to his appeal. Rod had a leather jacket and he had a vulgar way of expressing himself that Nancy sometimes found a little embarrassing. Still, she knew that he was basically a good person, and she was confident that someday Tina Gray would be known as the girl who finally tamed the infamous Rod Lane. Rod, on the other hand, would never be known for the brilliance of his repartee. Yo! Hey! As Tina and Nancy and Glegg strode off without him. Up yours with a twirling lawnmower! Rod says the sweetest things, said Tina, as the boy took off across the lawn. Oh, he's nuts about you, said Nancy, smiling at her friend. Yeah, nuts. Anyway, I was too afraid to think about it and go back to sleep. Tina paused and looked at Nancy. So what did you dream? Forget it, Nancy said. She felt herself shudder as she recalled the nightmare that had kept her up most of the night. The point is, everybody has a bad dream once in a while. It's no biggie. Next time you're having one, Glenn suggested, just tell yourself that's all it is, right while you're having it. Once you do that, you wake up. Well, at least it works for me. He looked at Nancy and shrugged. They had just reached the steps in front of Springwood High when the first bell began to ring. Glenn quickly kissed Nancy on the cheek and dashed off to his first class. Hey! Yelled Tina as the boy took off, climbing the 2 steps at a time. Did you have a nightmare too? Glenn was long gone. Tina turned back to Nancy and sighed deeply. Maybe we're gonna have a big earthquake or something. They say things get really weird right before. But there was no earthquake, and Tina was still thinking about her dream when she got home from school that afternoon.
You thought you killed me. Freddy Krueger will never die. I'm closer than you'd think. Just a phone call away. Dial this number and prepare to be scared. And I'm always around, everywhere. So dial this number now if you dare. Join the Freddy Fan Club. Freddy Krueger has a special message just for you.
$1.50 for the first minute, 35 cents each additional minute.
Jason is back. 3 times before, you have felt the terror, known the madness, lived the horror. But this is the one you've been screaming for. Because Friday, April 13th, will be Jason's unlucky day. Friday the 13th, the final chapter, rated R.
Okay, you 80s freaks. I warned you to stay away from the Cafe Noir. Now you'll pay the price.
No, that's what you think.
Up with Battlematic action, you control their swords.
Sword is mine.
The rock and all season. Each sold separately. New Angry 80s.
Hey kids, this is the Angry 80s guy here to remind you to pick up your official Angry 80s action figure. Available somewhere today. Good evening. Now, before we continue any further with tonight's episode, I wanted to give a big shout out to Edward and to Angelina Ballerina. You know, you guys have been watching and commenting, and also to a friend and neighbor, you know who you are, that lives behind me. He offered up the chicken, and to you guys too watching, I wanted to give a big shout out. I really appreciate the feedback and, you know, the little talking back and forth. It's been kind of cool getting your guys' perspective on channel here. Anyway, I suppose we gotta get back to the kitchen. And welcome back. Now, in the book, you'll notice that Freddy is a lot less quippy, but that's in general for part 1 in the first place. He's also way more disturbing. And you know, kind of like your woke cousin who won't shut the fuck up at Thanksgiving, the first half of this book, you know, it just sets the tone for how the rest of the day is gonna go. Or night. You see, Chapter 1 introduces us to Nancy, who's having those same familiar nightmares. But, you know, the book lets us linger in the dread just a little bit longer. And you know, much like California's infrastructure, things are already starting to fall apart. And speaking of falling apart, it's time to start prepping for our boiler room chicken. Now, we're going for that lightly charred, possibly doomed effect. And we're gonna rub these chicken breasts down with some paprika, cayenne, and oh hell, you know, we happen to have all that right here. With our trusty Killer Cafe Mix, or Cafe Killer Mix, however you want to call it. But we can't use this just yet. First, I'm going to open it up and just let it breathe. That one right there has a bite, and that's just what you want. Gotta have the right spice for the boiler room effect. Now here's where it's going to get tricky. But we planned ahead. See, we happen to have Freddy's glove right on hand. So we're going to take Freddy's claw, and we're going to twist our board over, just like so, and we're going to measure this out. So, put this down. Okay, now what you want to do is just want to go inside a little bit. And you don't have to worry about perfect cuts because you want that serrated, jagged claw mark. Something about like that. Freddy definitely had fun with that piece of meat. Now, we're going to do the same thing with these other 2 pieces of meat. And, you know, the best part about this recipe, here, we're going to stop right there. I'm going to show you the best part of this recipe, because this is really the secret. When you go to start putting your seasoning in, about like that. Now, we're going to take, and we're just going to put some in my hand. You can also use a little tablespoon or something like that. But it's going to get my hands wet and dirty anyway. Because the way I'm doing this, we're going to stuff that down in there. And we're going to massage it all into our meat, giving it this burnt look already, and that's without even being cooked. Yeah, just like that. Right. Kind of like that. Now, we've got it completely smeared in, and our next step is we're going to take 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, which I've gotten pretty good at this by now, and we're just going to drop some in. Kind of eyeball it. You don't need much, just enough to get your chicken in there. We're going to heat that up. Boiler room style. Let's crank that heat all the way. Now, this has cayenne pepper, paprika, some chili powder, some soul food, which everybody knows Freddy loves soul food. And just look at that. How sweet. Dark meat. Actually, it's white meat, but we're going to make it dark. So, in fact, we got that. There we go. Same thing right here. Excess. And you'll notice we actually got another piece in this package. It's not even a real piece of chicken. So we're going to take these 2 pieces and we're going to do something gross with those. Alright. Ah, that's good. This is what you're looking for. We got it. Let's get some more seasoning on here. Add a pinch more dread to the matter. So now we've got these completely seared, ready to sear. So I'm going to smear some more of the seasoning on here. And we're going to get that cooked alive, burnt look at the end of this. You know, kind of how your wallet looks once you stay in Los Angeles too long. You're watching the Cafe Noir. I'm going to get these in the pan. And why don't I throw you into the fire? Right there in the boiler room with Freddy. It didn't make her feel any better to learn that her mother was going to be spending the next couple of nights out of town with her current boyfriend. The first thing Tina did was invite Nancy Thompson to spend the night at her house. Neither girl objected when Glenn decided to tag along. "I'm glad you could stay over," Tina said when her friends arrived. "My mom said she's taking off for 2 days. I almost died." "Hey, no problem," Nancy said, giving her friend an arm reassuring squeeze. Nancy and Glenn to the rescue. The girls settled themselves on the couch, and Glenn announced that he'd have to call home. "I can't believe his mother's letting him stay here," Tina said. "Well, he's not," with a mischievous smile. "She isn't exactly." The girls watched as Glenn inserted a cassette tape into the oversized tape player he had placed on the table next to the telephone. He waited for his mother to pick up the phone. "So I borrowed this sound effects tape." "Hello, Mom?" He pushed the button on the tape, playing on the sound. 747 from a landing suddenly filled the room. "Yeah, I'm out here at Barry's," he said. He grinned. The girls were laughing. Nancy put her hand over Tina's mouth to stop her from laughing. "Yeah, noisy as usual. Glad we don't live here, or what?" "Oh, Annalise says hello." The roar of the jet overwhelmed as Glenn was standing in the middle of the plane. "I'll call you in the morning," he shouted, his lips pressed against the mouthpiece. "Don't worry. Suddenly the tape went silent, then a new roaring began. This time it was the roar of stock cars screeching on blacktop around the racetrack. "I'm not sure," said Glenn into the telephone, struggling to improvise. think some kids are having a drag race outside. Then the sound effects changed again. There was a screeching of brakes and blood-flowing screams. And the sound of a horrible collision. Nancy jumped from the couch and tried to turn off the tape recorder, but her fingers found the fast forward instead. I gotta go, Mom. Glenn's glaring at Tina and dissolved into laughter on the couch. I think there's been an accident out front. Meanwhile, Nancy had managed to turn off the machine. But now they were both in the middle of a full-scale war, complete with chattering machine guns and exploding bombs. Right, shouted Glenn. I'll call the police. No, Mom, just some neighbors having a fight, I guess. I'm fine. Mom, I'll call you in the morning. At last, Nancy finally found the actual stop button, and the room filled with blessed silence. Worked like a charm, said Nancy as Tina exploded with laughter. An hour later, Tina, Nancy, and Glenn were relaxing in front of a cozy fire listening to soft music on the stereo. Maybe we should call Rod and ask him over, said Nancy, as she snuggled up next to Glenn on the couch. Rod and I are through, said Tina. She sat back and propped her feet up on the coffee table. He's too much of a maniac. You should join the Marines, Glenn said. Maybe then they could make something out of him, like a hand grenade. Tina laughed. See, said Nancy, you're forgetting the whole bad dream already. Didn't I tell you? Tina shook her head sadly, the smile gone from her face. All day long I've been seeing that guy's weird face, she said, and hearing those fingernails. Fingernails? Echoed Nancy, staring at her friend in amazement. It's so strange that you're saying that. It made me remember the dream I had last night. What did you dream? I dreamed about a guy in a dirty red and green sweater. Nancy suddenly felt a very uncomfortable and shrill feeling. He had these fingernails. They scraped along things. Well, actually, they were more like finger knives or something, like he'd made them himself. Anyway, they made this horrible screeching noise. Nancy imitated the chilling sound of the metal scraping against metal. Screech! And Tina sat up straight in her chair. Nancy, you dreamed about the same creep I did. That's impossible, Glenn said, as the two girls stared at each other. Two people can't. He stopped abruptly and looked out the window. What is it? Whispered Tina. Nothing, said Glenn. There's somebody out there. Well, I didn't hear anything, said Nancy. And they all heard it, the thin, sharp sound of something scraping against the house, just outside the window. Jesus, whispered Tina. It was Glenn who made the first move. He unlocked the door and stepped out into the darkness. I'm gonna punch out your ugly lights, whoever you are, he announced. But the only answer was a slight rustling in the bushes. Glenn promptly turned around and headed back toward the house, but the two girls propped him further into the darkness. It's only a stupid cat, he said, a little more loudly than necessary. As he edged slowly towards the bushes, he stopped in his tracks as the unmistakable scraping sound disturbed the silence of the night. Screech! Kitty, kitty, said Glenn, taking a few cautious steps forward. Chow, chow, chow? There was no answer, but complete and utter silence. Glenn turned towards the girls and shrugged. He was about to speak when a large figure leaped out from behind the bush and threw him to the ground with a terrible shout. Tina turned to run for help when she recognized the hulking figure of Rod Lane. And it's number 36, the boy said, rising quickly to his feet, bringing Lance down at the 3-yard goal line. With a brilliant tackle, and the fans go wild. Rod grinned widely as he threw his arm around Tina's shoulders. "What the hell are you doing here?" asked Tina. "I came to make up," said Rod. He glanced toward the house. "Your mom home?" "Of course." The girl lied. She noticed the metal object in Rod's right hand. "Oh, what's that?" Rod held up a rusty old hand rake he had found laying in the yard and scraped it slowly against the side of the house. Tina winced as she heard the horrible screeching noise and had first attracted Glenn's attention. "Pretty intense, huh?" Rod said, tossing the rake aside. "So what's happening? An orgy or something?" "Maybe a funeral, dickhead," said Glenn. He glared furiously at the boy who had just scared and humiliated him in front of the girls. Rod turned to Glenn sharply, with a switchblade knife suddenly appeared in his hand. Without a moment's hesitation, Nancy stepped between the two boys. "It's just a sleepover date," she told Rod. "Just Tina and me. Glenn was just leaving." Rod stared at Glenn for a few seconds longer before closing the knife and slipping it back into his jacket pocket. Glenn breathed a sigh of relief as Rod threw his arm around Tina again and laughed. "Did you see his face?" he said, grinning as if he had just pulled off a brilliant practical joke. Then he glanced at the house again and seized up the situation. "Your ma ain't home, is she?" Without waiting for an answer, he took Tina by the arm and began dragging her toward the house. "Me and Tina got stuff to discuss," he said. "We got her mother's bed. You got the rest." Nancy waited uncertainly for a few seconds, then turned to Glenn. "I think we should get out of here," she said. Before Glenn could reply, Tina reappeared at the front door. The top button of her blouse was already undone. "You guys are hanging around, right?" she said. "Don't leave me alone with this lunatic." Nancy watched as her friend disappeared back into the house. She knew Tina really wanted to spend the night with Rod. And yet, so well, guard her together, said Glenn, interrupting her thoughts. "Through the night." Nancy looked at Glenn and nodded. "We're here for Tina now, not ourselves," she said. "Okay." In other words, Glenn thought as he nodded in agreement, "I'm sleeping on the couch." Sometimes he wished that Nancy could be a little more like her friend Tina. Why was she so bothered by a stupid nightmare anyway? He asked as he began walking back toward the house. "Because it was scary, that's all. Don't you think it's weird, both of us dreaming about the same guy?" Glenn looked away and Nancy felt a sudden chill. "You had a dream last night too, didn't you?" Glenn shrugged his shoulders. "I never remember my dreams," he said. "All I know is my mom's going to kill me when she does the wash. I practically ripped my sheet in half." Nancy wanted to continue the conversation, but it was getting late, and she was suddenly feeling very tired. She went inside with Glenn and kissed him goodnight. Then she locked herself into Tina's room. Glenn couldn't help but think about Rod and Tina ferociously copulating each other while Nancy and he had spent the night in separate rooms. "Morality sucks," he said softly. Then he pulled the covers up over his head and tried to get some sleep. All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about Chapter 2, shall we? Now, as we divulge further into the story, here's where we really see how different the book is from the movie. You see, Tina's nightmare in the book is so much more graphic and detailed. I mean, it describes so much that, see, I don't want to spoil it yet because we haven't quite got there. But as we go back into the story, I want you guys to pay specific detail to Freddy Krueger, Tina, and the dream itself. See, this is where I get a lot of confused. Because I want to jump in and I can't wait to talk about the graphic. It's too early. And you guys know me. Not a very patient fellow. Speaking of being patient, I gotta flip these. See, we're trying to get these good and like basically cooked. Because all we want to do is get them into the broiler. Get them into the broiler to get that burnt, charred flavor and look. But you know, again, getting ahead of myself, and I'm good at that. See, first, we gotta make up our blood mix. So, we're gonna take some Worcestershire. I figure about a tablespoon. Basically, you just want to cover up the very bottom of it. Now, we're going to take some barbecue sauce next. Again, probably about a tablespoon. I mean, we're not going to need much of this, just enough. Okay then. There we go. There we go. That's our second layer. And now, to maintain that hot and spicy vibe, we're going to take some of our hot sauce. We got the Taco Bell hot sauce. Because, just like everybody else, since Donald Trump came into office, we're running for the border. There you go. Now we're going to close this up first before there's another accident. We're just going to stir that up, just like so. You know, that's pretty close. I can dig it, that's pretty close. I think I know what's missing though. Here we go. Add some ketchup. Give it that red, that deep red that'll blend in. Now blend it up some more. Oh yeah, that's perfect. Alright, let's check on our chicken. It's getting there. As a matter of fact, it's just about there. And we're just about there. Where? Just about there.
When the end of the world is coming, who do you call?
Hey, anybody see a ghost?
Ghostbusters.
What are you doing?
I'm sorry. We thought you were someone else.
They're the best.
What was it?
They're the only.
Whatever it is, it's got to get by us. Go get her, Ray. We came, we saw, we kicked it.
Ghostbusters, the supernatural comedy. Rated PG. Starts Friday. You thought you killed me. Freddy Krueger will never die. I'm closer than you think. Just a phone call away. Dial this number and prepare to be scared. And I'm always around, everywhere. So dial this number now if you dare. Join the Freddy Fan Club. Freddy Krueger has a special message just for you.
$1.50 for the first minute, 35 cents each additional minute.
They're coming.
Marshmallows, Frankenberry, and Count Chocula. Now all the monster cereals have bigger monster-sized marshmallows. Count Chocula has enormous chocolatey marshmallows. It's a delicious part of this nutritious breakfast. New monster marshmallows are here.
The monster marshmallows are here.
They're everywhere.
Whoa!
Chapter 2. Tina had a reputation for being fast. It wasn't something she was especially proud of, but it wasn't anything she lost sleep over either. Tina knew she really didn't deserve the reputation. Sure, she had slept with a few boys, but that didn't mean she was some kind of pushover. She liked sex. And she knew how to protect herself. If she wanted to fool around once in a while, Tina figured, well, it's nobody's damn business but her own. I knew there was something about you I liked, she said as she snuggled closer to Rod in her mother's bed that night. You feel better now, right? He asked with a satisfied grin. Jungle Man fixed Jane, said Tina. Rod was definitely a little rough around the edges, but there was a vulnerable side to the boy that really turned Tina on. No more fights, said Rod, his hand resting on Tina's small breast. No more fights, she agreed, feeling very sleepy and content. She thought about Nancy sleeping alone across the hall. It was hard for her to understand how her best friend could go out with a nice boy like Glenn for so long without wanting to go all the way. Good night, said Rod, yawning loudly as he pulled the cover over his head. No more nightmares for either one of us then. Suddenly, Tina felt a cold chill race down her spine. When did you have a nightmare? She asked. Guys have nightmares too, said Rod. You girls don't exactly have a corner on the market or something. Tina stared at the unmoving figure beside her for a moment and then took a deep breath. She was glad to be here with Rod, and she wasn't going to let some dumb nightmare ruin things for her. Besides, she felt safe with Rod. She watched him for a moment as he slept and then turned out the light. Tonight, I'm finally going to get a good night's sleep, she thought, even if it kills me. She had not been asleep long when she heard the noise. At first, she thought it was just the faucet dripping. She tried not to pay attention, but the pinging noises were too loud and too persistent to be ignored. Rod? She whispered, but the boy only snored steadily beside her. She sat up in bed, wondering how Rod could sleep through all the racket. There was another ping, and Tina realized it was coming from outside. She stepped into her slippers and reached the window in time to see a pebble bounce off the glass. Jesus, she whispered. It was windy out, and the trees were blowing wildly in the darkness. Suddenly, a large stone smashed right into the glass, startling Tina as a thin and ragged crack appeared inside the window pane. Somebody threw that, Tina thought. Suddenly, furious at whoever was out there disturbing her precious sleep, without thinking, she dashed downstairs and stepped out into the darkness. Who are you? She demanded, her voice small and thin in the howling wind. For a moment, she considered going back inside to get her robe, but something seemed to compel her to step further into the blackness instead. Then she was at the gate, stepping outside before turning around to look at the house. Only she couldn't see the familiar old house on Elm Street anymore. Instead, she seemed to be in an alley that she vaguely remembered seeing before in a dream. It was completely quiet now, except for the rushing of the wind. Then the metal lid of a trash can came clattering down the alley, crashing to a halt at Tina's feet. She stared at the lid for a moment and took a deep breath to calm herself. She was still assuring herself that everything was all right when she heard a horrible scraping of metal on cinder block, his steel fingers rising bright yellow sparks as they screeched horribly along the alleyway. Tina turned, looking for a place she was about to make a break, and then at the end of the alley, when a horrible man suddenly extended his long, bony arms along the full length of the narrow alleyway, cutting off the girl's only escape route. "Oh, God," she whispered. "This is God," replied the man hoarsely, his twisted mouth grinning obscenely as he clicked his razor-sharp blades in Tina's face. And then she was running. She didn't know how she slipped past the man in the red and green sweater, and there was no time to stop and think it over. Tina was running for her life, faster than she had ever run before. But as fast as she ran, the man with the deadly finger knives was never more than a few steps behind her. Tina was grasping for breath now, knocking over trash cans to slow down her pursuer. But nothing she did seemed to make any difference. Whenever she glanced over her shoulder, there he was, his hideous face leering at her from beneath his crumpled fedora, and his deadly blades glittering in the moonlight. Then, abruptly, Tina was no longer on the city streets, running instead across what seemed like an endless stretch of identical suburban lawns. Tina shouted for help, sure that someone would help her, hear her, save her from the maniac who seemed determined to kill her. But there was no answer to her desperate cries, and the only sounds Tina could hear were those of her own labored breathing and the pounding of her bursting heart. Then she stopped for a second to catch her breath and look behind her. There was no one there. Thank God, she thought, her lungs aching after the long, hard run. She looked around her to get her bearings and suddenly realized that she was on her own block again. Boring old Elm Street had never looked lovelier. Tina took a deep breath and gazed fondly at the big elm tree that had stood on the corner for as far back as anyone could remember. And there stood the man in the filthy sweater, a look of mad triumph on his face. Tina didn't know how he had managed to hide behind every tree she had been looking at, but there he was, large as life and 1,000 times more frightening. Tina turned and ran, suddenly uncertain which of the almost identical houses on the blocks was hers. Then she saw it, the low brick wall her father had built in front of the house not long before her folks had split up. She ran toward the house, the madman's foul breath hot on her neck. It seemed to take forever, but finally she reached the door and grabbed desperately for the knob. Locked. "Nancy!" she screamed, suddenly remembering that her friend was in the house. "Nancy! Open the door! Nancy!" "Nancy can't help you now," said the madman, now standing behind her with a fiendish grin on his deformed face. Nancy is still awake. Still awake, thought Tina, as she felt the razor-sharp blades slice through her nightgown and into her tender skin. And suddenly, she was inside, lying safely next to Rod in her mother's bed. It was all a dream, she told herself, smiling peacefully as her head sank back to the soft pillow. Everything's going to be all right after all. Then she saw him, and she knew nothing was going to be right ever again. Rod felt the bed shaking and opened his eyes. "Tina?" he said slowly, remembering where he was and whom he was with. But there was no answer except for the anguished cries and moans that seemed to be coming from somewhere deep inside the mattress. His heart pounding, Rod yanked the cover off the bed. He stared in horror at the sight of Tina thrashing around wildly. Then suddenly, her body stiffened as if someone or something was pinning her to the bed, and her nightgown was roughly pulled open by unseen hands. Rod watched helplessly as 4 long, bloody gashes appeared across the girl's stomach, followed by 4 more, and then 4 more, until Tina and the entire bed were soaked in a river of blood. Rod screamed and reached for the light, Suddenly, Tina's body rose from the bed as if lifted by invisible hands and swung through the air like a human baseball bat, knocking Rod to the floor. He lay there and watched in mute horror as Tina's mangled corpse slid feet first up the bedroom wall, leaving behind a trail of gore. "What in the hell is going on?" Rod screamed, fighting back the tears and vomit as he watched the bloody pulp that was once Tina Gray hanging limp and lifeless from the ceiling, suspended by some invisible and insanely sadistic power. His screams began in earnest as the girl's slashed remains plopped down like a sack of blood, splashing Rod and everything in the room as it hit the bed with a sickening thud. Nancy sat up in bed just as the body fell from the ceiling. She arrived at the bedroom door just moments before Glenn. "What's going on?" asked Glenn. "I don't know," said Nancy, pulling on the door and finding it locked. From the other side, she could hear Rod's desperate threats. "Who did this?" he screamed, glaring around helplessly in search of whoever or whatever had murdered Tina. "I swear I'll kill you for this!" Rod! Nancy pounding on the door. "You'd better not hurt Tina!" And then Rod began to make a horrible rasping noise that Nancy would never forget as long as she had lived. She was still trying to decide whether he was laughing or crying when Glenn barreled into the door like a star football player that he was. The door burst open and Nancy rushed in and saw the blood. Tina's blood. The same blood that soaked the bed, the walls, the ceiling, the curtains, all around the window. The same window through which Rod had made his escape. And then Nancy saw the hacked remains of her friend's body. She wanted to cry but didn't. Tears wouldn't bring Tina back to life, and they wouldn't catch the sadistic son of a bitch that had killed her. Someone would pay for this. Nancy swore it, even as the vomit began to surge upward from the throbs of her guts.
Remember when you were just a little kid and your mommy used to warn you not to sit too close to the TV set? Well, you know something, she was fucking right.
Daddy, they're coming.
Imagine a child.
She's very beautiful, she's very young.
Who has the power.
She can light fires, yes, but you're making her sound like Armageddon.
Now meet Charlie McGee.
We'll have
8 years old.
Come to me, Charlie.
And afraid.
Charlie!
Feel for her. Fear for her. Charlie McGee is Stephen King's fire starter. Will she have the power to survive? Rated R. Starts Friday at select theaters. Check newspapers for locations.
Major Video, we bring it on home.
Look what's at Major Video now. The largest selection of hottest movies now on video cassette. Predator, La Bamba, No Way Out, Platoon, Dirty Dancing. Major Video for the largest selection of videos in New England. Look around, relax, enjoy, and remember, lifetime membership is always free at Major Video, the super video store.
We bring it on home.
Now on Mineral Spring Avenue, Pawtucket, Armistice Boulevard, Pawtucket, Warwick Avenue, Warwick, and coming soon to Post Road, North Kingstown.
I had too much to do last night. Too much to drink. I'm not ready to face the light. I had too much to drink last night.
Let Freddy Krueger turn your dreams into his nightmares.
I had too much to dream last night. I had too much to dream.
Freddy's Nightmare. Tonight on KHNL 13.
And welcome back. So, I want to take a minute and really talk about Chapter 2. In particular, Tina's death. You know, I gotta be honest, I always was freaked out when watching this movie, okay? But after reading the novelization and seeing how different from the movie, how much more graphic, I mean, it was literally describing the slash marks, and I got this vision of like melted cheese being slashed open. Oh, and you know, speaking of melted cheese, we're gonna go ahead and start our broiler on our chicken. And we are melting this butter down into here. So, now the fun part. We're gonna take some parsley. Throw that down in there. Helpful hint. If you're doing this and you want to make it look kind of fleshy, I want you guys to take a look right here. And I want you to get a look down here. That right there is what we're going for. If you look, that skin on the taters, once we use our beater here, and we add just a dash of milk and some more flavoring up here, it'll really give that essence of melted flesh with skin still peeling off. Because just like we've got this in the broiler, we're going to take and put this, while it's hot, in there and let cheese melt and bubble right over the top of our mashed potatoes. So, I think, you know what? We need about 30 seconds, and I have something that takes up just that amount of time.
Okay, you 80s freak. I warned you to stay away from the Cafe Noir. Now you'll pay the price.
No, that's what you think.
Up with Battlematic action, you control their swords.
The sword is mine.
Everyone, the Rock, and Ortiz Zan, each sold separately. New Angry 80s.
Hey kids, this is the Angry 80s guy, here to remind you to pick up your official Angry 80s action figure. Available somewhere today. This is not a real product. Do not try to buy this. Do not try to get this at home.
They're revolting.
Okay, sorry for the interruption. I had to use the bathroom. You know, I gotta tell you, don't ever play Bloody Mary when you've had a couple Bloody Marys. I'd still like to know where I got the scratches from. Now, for this dish, you want that peeled flesh kind of look. You know, something that looks as though Freddy Krueger himself just pulled it out of the fires in the boiler room and set it down at his table at home. And to achieve that, what we're going to do is we are going to take some cheese. Just good old-fashioned, all-around American cheese. And we're going to place this here. I'm going to move this up and see if you guys can see what's going on right here. Now, we're going to place it in, and you just want to get it covered. Whoops. Now here is where it's going to get a little tricky. See, I only seasoned it with that little bit and some butter. Nothing else. And I did that for this reason. Now we are going to take some... I lost my... there it is. One day I'm going to clean that shelf. I am going to take some soul food, and we're going to lightly glaze the top. And if you guys will get a good look here in this camera, that coloring, and I know it looks a little off, and I'm going to show you how to fix that. But we're going to lightly glaze over the top. Now this shit can get a bit of a kick and a bit of a bite to it. So what you want to do, real light sprinkle. Keep it light. Now, we're going to take a capful of some hot sauce. Just something like that, real light. And I just used the cap because with these, hell, even with the cap, that happens. You just seem to have it come out too fast to control. It is sort of like a teenage boy on prom night. And you know, speaking of teenage boys on prom night, fun fact, you know, in California, they would probably ban this dish. You know, just because it's being too insensitive to fictional burn victims. But, you know, don't worry. I'm sure there's a tofu version out there somewhere. This is the Cafe Noir. And this is Chapter 3 of A Nightmare on Elm Street. Don Thompson had never wanted to be anything but a cop. Long after his boyhood pals had outgrown their dreams of becoming firemen or baseball players and settled for more mundane careers as accountants and insurance salesmen, Don Thompson continued in his pursuit of a lifelong ambition. He joined the Springwood Police Department right after graduating high school and quickly worked his way up through the ranks. By the time he earned his sergeant's stripes, Don Thompson was happily married to his high school sweetheart and the father of a beautiful baby girl. Unfortunately, Marge Thompson soon discovered that the life of a police officer's wife was not nearly so exciting or glamorous as she had hoped for. By the time Thompson made lieutenant, he was divorced with an ex-wife who drank too much and a beautiful teenage daughter whom he didn't see nearly as often as he wanted to. Thompson was dreaming about the old days when he and Marge were still able to carry on a civil conversation when he was abruptly awakened by the emergency phone call. He dressed quickly, gulped down a cup of coffee, and drove himself downtown to the police station. It was Jerry Parker, one of the new patrolmen who met him at the door. "What have you got?" asked Thompson, getting right down to business as usual. He would never admit it to anyone, but this was exactly the sort of case he used to fantasize about when he was a little boy, dreaming about growing up to become a cop. Murders didn't happen every day in quiet suburban communities like Springwood, and the ones that did were usually open and shut cases. Drunken husband shooting his wife over some real or imagined infidelity. Razor was the weapon according to the coroner, said Parker, glancing at the report in his hands. Or razors, more likely. Looks like the victim's boyfriend did it. Guy by the name of Lane. Lane, echoed the lieutenant, not sounding very surprised. Musician type. Couple priors for brawling, drunk and disorderly. Real troublemaker. Anyway, we got no parents to claim the body. According to the other kids, the father split a couple of years ago, and the victim's mother, she's in Vegas. We're trying to reach her now. Terrific, said the lieutenant as they reached the interrogation room. Now what the hell was she doing there? She lives there, said the patrolman, puzzled. I don't mean her, said the lieutenant, sounding very annoyed. He turned to the girl who sat beside her mother in a brightly lit room. I mean you! Nancy Thompson looked up at her father. What was she doing there? He demanded, turning angrily to his ex-wife. Hello to you too, Donald, said Marge, a cigarette in her trembling hand. Marge, he replied, struggling to control his quick temper. He took a deep breath and looked at Nancy. How you doing, baby? He asked, forcing himself to smile. I'm okay, Dad, said Nancy, disturbed by her father's unconvincing smile. She wondered if she looked anywhere near as bad as she felt inside. Well, that's good, said the lieutenant, exaggerating his worried look with his ex-wife. Then he looked hard into Nancy's eyes and took another deep breath. As a patrolman, he knew he needed to be patient and tactful in extracting the necessary information from the girl. As a father, there were questions he wanted answers to right away. I don't want to get into this now, he began. God knows you need time. He paused for a second, and suddenly the anger and frustration of a frightened father overwhelmed the cool detachment of the trained cop. But I'd sure like to know what the hell you were doing shacked up with 3 other kids in the middle of the night, especially one of them a lunatic delinquent like Rod Lane. Nancy recoiled, if she had been slapped. Rod's not a lunatic, she said, knowing even as she spoke how absurd the words must sound. You got a sane explanation for what he did? Tell him how jealous Rod was, said Marge, placing a hand on her daughter's trembling shoulder. Tell him about the fight they had had. It wasn't that serious, said Nancy, quietly slouching deeper into the chair as she struggled to make sense of the terrible thing that had just happened tonight. Not serious, said her mother. You don't think murder is serious? Then suddenly, Nancy was upright. Her eyes flashed with indignation. Tina was my best friend in the whole world, she shouted. How can you say I don't take her death seriously? Marge nodded to indicate her apology, and Nancy continued in a softer tone. All I meant was that their fights weren't that serious. She was quiet for a moment, and then suddenly she remembered why Tina asked her in the first place to sleep over. Tina dreamed this would happen, she whispered, more to herself than to her mother or father. What? She had a nightmare about somebody trying to kill her. That's why we were there. She was scared to sleep alone. Of all the lieutenant began, but Marge cut him off in a mid-sentence. Nancy's been through enough for one night, she said. You have her statement. Then, ignoring her husband's glare, she took her daughter's hand and stood up. Thompson was about to order them to sit down and thought better of it. He would have a long talk with Marge about the way she was bringing up their daughter, but this was clearly neither the time nor the place for that discussion. Don Thompson was on the phone with his ex-wife early the next morning, while Nancy stood transfixed on the front of the TV and listened to the local news. In the headlines this morning, said the announcer, the brutal murder of a local teenage girl at an all-night party in Springwood. Police say the victim, 15-year-old Tina Gray, had been arguing with her boyfriend shortly before last night's bloody slaying. The boyfriend, Rod Lane, is now the subject of a citywide manhunt. According to police, the murder weapon appears to have been a straight razor or similar sharp object. I have to go, said Marge, promptly hanging up the phone as she rushed to turn off the television. She arrived too late to stop Nancy from seeing the film of the body bag being carried from Tina's house to the coroner's van. Marge wondered how much of his influence her ex-husband had used to keep their daughter's name out of the story and the reporters away from their door. Don't go to school today, kiddo, she asked, taking Nancy in her arms and giving her a quick hug. You need your sleep. I heard you tossing and turning all night. I've got to go to school, Mother, said Nancy, gently freeing herself from her mother's embrace. Otherwise, I'll sit up there and I'll go crazy. Did you sleep at all? I'll sleep in study hall, Nancy promised. I'd rather keep busy, you know. Marge nodded and kissed Nancy on the forehead. Sometimes, she wished that she were as good as her daughter was at handling difficulties. For Marge, booze had always seemed the easiest way to make troubles disappear. Come right home after? She said. Right home, Nancy promised, hugging her mother one more time before picking up her books and heading off to school. Nancy had only walked a few blocks when she began to get the feeling she was being watched. She turned around and noticed the tall man in dark glasses standing across the street. For a second, she thought he was staring at her. My best friend just got killed, she thought. I guess I'm entitled to be a little jumpy. She took a few more steps and then glanced back over her shoulder. The man with the dark glasses was gone. Don't be paranoid, she told herself, although she couldn't imagine how the man had managed to disappear so abruptly. Then she took a deep breath of the fresh morning air and walked a little more quickly toward Springwood High. She was only a block away from school when a strong hand clamped over Nancy's mouth and she was dragged into the bushes. Nancy had begun to struggle when she realized she was being held by Rod Lane. "Don't scream," he whispered. "I'm not going to hurt you." He waited until Nancy stopped struggling before removing his hand from her mouth. "Your old man thinks I did it, don't he?" "Did you?" asked Nancy as calmly as she could, with her heart pounding like a jackhammer. "Of course not," said Rod angrily. "I never touched her. You were screaming like a madman." "Someone else was there," he said, knowing even as he spoke how crazy he must have sounded. Nancy looked at Rod for a long moment, and she shook her head instinctively. She knew he was telling the truth, and yet... "The front door was locked when the police came," she said, trying very hard to make sense of Rod's story. "And the bedroom door was locked from your side." "Don't look at me like I'm some fucking fruitcake," said Rod. "I swear I never touched her." Nancy nodded, and she was about to say that she believed him when she realized he was staring over her shoulder. "Good morning, Rod," said a familiar voice. Nancy turned to see her father standing behind her with his police 38 special pointed squarely between Rod's eyes. "Now just move away from her, son. Real easy, like your ass depended on it." Rod looked at Nancy for just a second, and then he lunged wildly out of the bushes. Nancy stared in horror as her father raised his revolver to the firing position. "No!" she screamed, jumping between Rod and her father. "Are you crazy?" shouted Thompson, pushing Nancy aside as he took off after Rod. The chase was a short one. Rod had already been wrestled to the ground by the tall man with dark glasses, even as two uniformed policemen roughly shoved Rod into the squad car. Nancy could hear the boy insisting that he hadn't done anything. She waited until the car door slammed before turning angrily to her father. "You used me!" she screamed. "What the hell did you expect?" he asked, bewildered and even more than a little annoyed at his daughter's attitude. "And what are you going to school today for anyway?" Nancy thought 1,000 things she wanted to say, but none of them seemed to express exactly what was in her heart at that moment. Instead, she simply turned away and strode briskly toward the school building. "Hey, Nancy!" the lieutenant shouted, but his daughter ignored him and kept on walking. He stood there staring and wondering what the hell was going on. "I guess I'll never understand women," thought Don Thompson as he turned around and walked slowly toward the car.
That's Jenny. But that's not Jenny's dad. If she gets into that car, you may be looking at Jenny for the last time. I'm McGruff, the crime dog. Let me show you something. See that playground? A lot of kids there. Every day in this country, 60 kids disappear. Some run away, but a lot are kidnapped by strangers or even by people they know. Almost 20,000 kids a year. 20,000 kids, one kid at a time. Maybe your kid, on your street, just like Jenny. You know, your kids can learn to protect themselves against crime at home, at school, on the street. Hey, nice going, Jenny. She's going to tell her folks about this. And you can write to McGruff. Learn how to keep your family and your community safe and help take a bite out of crime.
The Sunday Morning Funny starring Laurel and Hardy now continue.
We are now into Chapter 3, which means Nancy's nightmares are fully unleashed. You know, Nancy's starting to realize that she's in real trouble, much like the people that have moved to San Francisco in the last 20 years. But I digress. You know, as we get ready to start tonight's meal, as far as dishing up and serving, and to me that's really the start. Sure, you cooked it, you prepared it, you did all that, but now you're starting because you get to eat it. Okay. Now, just take a good gander at that. See if I can give you guys a better look here. The claw marks and the blood just dripping down. And you know, speaking of the blood, this book really does give us, you know, more of the thoughts of Nancy, and that she's not so much just scared, but she's really starting to unravel. You know, kind of like my patients when people tell me that Freddy just needed therapy. Oh, and that is our melting flesh mashed potatoes. Let's see how they turned out. Damn, those smell good. Right. Okay. Oh, that's perfect. And there is our melted flesh. Oh yeah, listen to that. And that, my friends, is our first dive into A Nightmare on Elm Street. The first 3 chapters gets us going. We get to meet the characters, get to know the story. And for those of you who are only familiar with the movie, I personally like the fact that you get more inside the characters' heads. You get to know the characters more. I mean, I always thought Nancy's dad was just some fucking dick, and her mom was just some fucking drunk. But I never really understood their perspective until reading the novel and just honestly getting to know, like, who they are as people. And Nancy, too. She always kind of struck me as this stuck-up... No, she was a normal kid going through hell because her parents fucked up. But we're not there yet, so I can't say anymore. Anyway, we are going to keep digging into this dish and digging into this book. In fact, next time we come back, we are going to be doing Chapter 4 and as many as we can within an hour. Because I figured on top of the show, with the book, we got about an hour. That gives us half hour, 45 minutes to cook. I hope you guys had fun. I hope you enjoyed the show. And, you know, until we return, just watch those nightmares. And remember, if your friends are having the same nightmare, you are the Dream Warriors. This is the Cafe Noir, and this is where I say goodnight. Cafe Noir was recorded in front of a live studio audience.
Now
a horrifying new monster GoBot emerges.
I like it.
Creepy, an evil renegade bent on destruction, and so sinister he's not available in any store. But buy any 4 GoBots and this special Creepy is yours free, a $4 value.
Excellent.
But hurry, offer expires December 31st. Look for details at participating toy departments.
Without delay.
Creepy, yours free when you buy any 4 GoBots, each sold separately only from Tonka.
Hey kids, this is the Angry 80s guy, here to remind you to pick up your official Angry 80s action figure. Available somewhere today. This is not a real product. Do not try to buy this. Do not try to get this at home.
They're revolting.
I had too much to do last night. Too much to dream. I'm not ready to face the light. I had too much to dream last night.
Let Freddy Krueger turn your dreams into his nightmares.
I had too much to dream last night. I had too much to dream.
Freddy's Nightmare. Tonight on KHNL 13.
They're coming!
Marshmallows, Frankenberry, and Count Chocula. Now all the monster cereals have bigger monster-sized marshmallows. Count Chocula has enormous chocolatey marshmallows. It's a delicious part of this nutritious breakfast. New monster marshmallows are here.
The monster marshmallows are here.
They're everywhere.
Whoa!
You thought you killed me. Freddy Krueger will never die. I'm closer than you think. Just a phone call away. Dial this number and prepare to be scared. And I'm always around, everywhere. So dial this number now if you dare. Join the Freddy Fan Club. Freddy Krueger has a special message just for you.
$1.50 for the first minute, 35 cents each additional minute.
When the end of the world is coming, who do you call?
Hey, anybody see a ghost?
Ghostbusters.
What are you doing?
I'm sorry. We thought you were someone else.
They're the best.
What was it?
They're the only.
Whatever it is, it's got to get by us. Go get her, Ray. We came, we saw, we kicked it.
Ghostbusters, the supernatural comedy. Rated PG. Starts Friday.
Jim Rockford will be right back after this.
Hi, I'm Sven Gulli, and this is Everybody Knows Me. I'm Tombstone. Anyway, we'll be hosting the movie Chud this Saturday.
Good luck.
Watch out for Chud on this week's Sven Gulli Cinema. Saturday afternoon at 5 on Channel 26, The U. Sven Gulli Cinema? How about Tombstone Talkie? Yeah.
Jason is back. 3 times before, you have felt the terror, known the madness, lived the horror. But this is the one you've been screaming for. Because Friday, April 13th, will be Jason's unlucky day. Friday the 13th, the final chapter, rated R.
Daddy, they're coming.
Imagine a child.
She's very beautiful. She's very young.
Who has the power.
She can light fires, yes, but you're making her sound like Armageddon.
Now meet Charlie McGee.
We'll have
8 years old.
Come to me, Charlie.
And afraid.
Charlie?
Feel for her. Fear for her. Charlie McGee is Stephen King's fire starter. Will she have the power to survive? Rated R. Starts Friday at select theaters. Check newspapers for locations.
I'm coming to get you Saturday night.
Freddy's Nightmares, Saturday at 7 on KTTY.
Look what's at Major Video now. The largest selection of hottest movies now on video cassette. Predator, La Bamba, No Way Out, Platoon, Dirty Dancing. Major Video for the largest selection of videos in New England. Look around, relax, enjoy, and remember, lifetime membership is always free at Major Video, the super video store. Now on Mineral Spring Avenue, Pawtucket, Armistice Boulevard, Pawtucket, Warwick Avenue, Warwick, and coming soon to Post Road, North Kingstown.